Hey, what's up? So, X-Men now have to contend with Marvel Girl being gone at college. But she's not really that gone. She's like in college in the city, so it's like a short jaunt. In fact, at some point in this issue, she just like meanders back. But it's important she goes to college because that's where she bumps into Dr. So-and-so, who is obsessed with bugs. Before that all begins, out in like the hinterlands, I think it's just like upstate New York, this guy wakes up and there's giant like locusts eating his crops. And he's like, oh, and then we see this guy, he's calls himself the Locust, and he's wearing a crazy green bug costume. And he's like, aha, I will use the thing to get my scheme, and I'm going to run away. I just want to make sure this would work. And then the National Guard or somebody comes in and like takes care of the bugs. I can't remember if the X-Men get pulled in. I read this a few days ago. I should have really done this like earlier. I just kept forgetting about it. Somebody takes care of it. Either the X-Men or the National Guard kills the bugs. And then I think it's just the National Guard, because they were like easily dispatched with like shotguns and like flamethrowers. But the X-Men hear about it and they're like, oh, that's weird. And they have a conversation about it. Meanwhile, Marvel Girl has like this guy who's kind of flirting with him and showing her around college. And then she meets the professor who's the Locust. Like that's his like real identity. And he used to be a professor, but something, he got kicked out for having like ideas about bugs or something. Anyway, he created this thing to increase the size of bugs. And his plan is he was like embarrassed by being kicked out of his professorship. So his plan is to create a bunch of bugs that are going to like do a lot of damage and then come up with the only solution, which he already has, to get rid of them. And it's genius plan. So he's gonna do it by going to like the bread belt, or it's not even the bread belt, it's like in Ohio or something. The corn belt. It looked like maybe it was Illinois. Anyway, not important. So Jean shows up back at the hood, and everyone's like chit-chatting about the mysterious locust man. And she's like, oh, that sounds like this professor I met. And the Professor X is like, oh, tell me more about him. And then Professor X does like his thing where he tries to search, and he finds the guy's office. Oh no, he goes to the school to meet with the guy. Oh no, he goes to the guy's working at a pharmaceutical company or something. That's right, or a pesticide company. He's working at some chemical plant. And so Professor X like goes over there, being Professor X, and it's like, oh, can I talk to this guy? And it's like, oh, he's not here, it looks like. He's like, oh, and he looks around his office, and he sees the map, and he sees some other stuff, and he like puts two and two together. So then he sends the X-Men, including Marvel Girl, to go investigate. And that's when they find the giant bugs, and they fight the giant bugs, and it's all fun giant bug fighting. And then they kind of beat them back, and the guy's like, oh, I'm going to summon my ultimate weapon, which is like two big beetles. But then Marvel Girl messes up his like antenna, so then the bugs start chasing him and attacking him, and he hides in his like trailer, his like sneaky trailer. Oh, at some point Professor X pretending to be like a wizard, is like warning the guy. He's like, oh, you can change, you don't have to be evil, you should go back on your things. And the guy's like, no, I will not. And then he's in the trailer, and the bugs grab the trailer, and they like go over a cliff, and there's like a giant cliff leading to like waters, and the X-Men try to save him, but they're not able to, and the whole thing crashes into the no, they do save him. They save him, but the bugs and the trailer crash into the water and are destroyed. And then the old man like shows up again. He's like, you need to repent and whatever. And the guy's like, oh, you're right, I do. I'm going to turn myself in, and I can't believe I did this. It was so selfish, something. Da 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 da. Hey, the X-Men actually did something this time. It's excellent. Like, without just like Professor X saving the day or just like random stuff. They were able to fight off an enemy. So congratulations, X-Men, you've grown. All right, cool. Catch y'all later. All right, so the next little arc we have after we took care of the Locust, Jean Grey's still gone. Who knows how long that's going to go for? But we have to deal with El Tigre. So the comic starts off with this band of gentlemen. It's actually like a treasure hunter guy and his like not minions, but these guys he hired to find like a secret treasure. And they go and they find the treasure, and then the two guys conspire to like kill him. His name's El Tigre, and which Stanley kindly reminds us means tiger, the tiger in Spanish. Love it. Anyway, so this does not need to be so loud. Okay. So, but he one of the things he found in the treasure hoard was this half a medallion, and the medallion is like the power of Kukulkan, who is what is this crazy thing? It's supposed to go like that. Why would you do that? Oh, sorry, I got distracted. Okay, so and the Ku Klux Klan tells him that, like, hey, this is going to give you a lot of powers, which it does. It gives him, like, mind-reading powers, like the powers of Professor X and some other kind of powers. Telekinesis, it seems, as well. But that if he finds the other half of the medallion and puts it together, then he'll have... Oh, no. So the medallion leads him to, like, a wall carving, which explains that, like... So he has power, but if he can get the full power, then he'll have even more power, right? If he gets the other half of the medallion, he'll have the full power. And so that leads him to New York City. So then we transition to the X-Men, who are in New York. And they're dropping off Jean again. And they're all sad because she has to go back to, like, real college or whatever. And, you know, that her little, like, boy toy friend, the blonde guy, is there to pick her up and be like, hey, what's up, girl? You want to hang? And then Scott and her both have, like, oh, my heart, if only Scott was not so cold to me. And, oh, if only Jean understood my true feelings, but I have to, this blasted curse of, like, shooting eye lasers, which I seem to have pretty much under complete control in the last, like, 20 some odd issues that we've gone through. Anyway, so she heads off, and then they head back home, and then Cerebro's like, burr, 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 warning. And Professor X is like, oh, I don't know what's going on. It's not a mutant, but sometimes Cerebro just picks up things that are mutant-like. Okay. I guess that's a thing Cerebro can do. Isn't any superpower going to be mutant-like? But I guess the justification is because the medallion is transforming him somewhat. It's like changing his genetic code, I guess, which makes more sense at the end. But as of right now, so the X-Men go off out of uniform to kind of track down the cause of this disturbance. And we go back and forth between them and El Tigre and his, like, cronies as they are, like, kind of following one another. Or El Tigre is avoiding them, and the X-Men are following him, and then they kind of get into some, like, spat, and then they track him down to, like, the Museum of Natural History or something. And once inside, the X-Men get subdued very easily by, like, the cronies, except for Cyclops, who almost captures El Tigre, but then like the Night Watchman shows up and, like, interrupts Cyclops, and then El Tigre, like, takes control of his mind, and you know, he has the guy point a gun at Cyclops. Cyclops says, oh, there's nothing I can do. And then El Tigre runs and grabs, like, the second half of the medallion and puts it together. And he's like, and he transforms. And he's like, I am now Ku Klux Klan transmogrified or whatever. And I have unlimited powers. And no one shall stop me. And that's where that issue wraps up. So now that Ku Klux Klan has been revitalized, there is not much left for him to do. He kind of just saunters on out of there. Cyclops tries to do something about it, but his optic blast reflects and hits him and kind of knocks him out. Professor X figures out everything that's going on, and he gets Bobby to kind of wake up so that Bobby can get everybody else up and out of there. And Scott kind of recovers somewhat quickly. He also reaches out to Jean Grey to ask her to get as much information as she can about Mayan civilization. So she gets kind of pulled back in. But not fully. She just comes and drops some information off. Her and Scott have, like, a back and forth, and Scott finally determines, like, I think she likes me. I'm going to go for it, guys. In his head. He doesn't tell anybody this. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to tell Jean how I feel, and I just got to do it. I got to do it. Meanwhile, Ku Klux Klan builds, like, a sun chariot and flies down to Central America, where he uses his Ku Klux Klan powers to, like, rise up some pyramids and, like, a sunstone that gathers power for him, because his amulet, which gives him power, gets power from the sun. So when the sun's down, he'd be weaker, but he's got this giant tower with a giant crystal that can absorb, it's like a solar battery, and so that he can access that and still have his powers at night. So the X-Men figure out where he's at, and they head down, and they run into aboriginals who try to trap them, and they're able to escape that. Angel's kind of jealous of Scott. He's like snapping back at him a lot because he realizes that Jean likes Scott and Scott likes Jean, and he's finally, like, he hasn't come to terms with it, so he's being kind of a pill about it. And he has some internal dialogue about that whole situation. But they're able to escape, and they're able to get to Ku Klux Klan, and they start fighting with him, and he's just, like, turning them up. But they're with their powers combined, and again, it's just the boys. Jean didn't come down. They're able to, like, cover the sun crystal with ice. Oh, there's a prophecy that they find too. That's important. It's like an apocalyptic prophecy. They call it the Holocaust. So anyone who gets the powers of this gentleman, of Ku Klux Klan, if they use too much of those powers, then there's like a thing that occurs, which is called the Holocaust. And so all the people in the area who are like descendants of the Mayan people, they're being like brainwashed, and they're coming to like help, which includes like the police, and then there's like tribes, like the Aboriginals, and then just various workers and stuff. We see a little bit of that, but it doesn't really go anywhere outside of like the trap they set. So the X-Men are fighting Kukulkan Khan. At some point, he deflects Scott's like optic blast, and it hits Angel and knocks him down. It doesn't kill him, but it does some serious damage, which is important. And then, but Bobby and Hank are able to cover the crystal with ice, and while Beast is like distracting him, and then Kukulkan Khan tries to pull on the power, but the ice is like stopping it. And so he gets super mad. So he like tries to unleash all his power, and when he does that, it like a thing, the earth like cracks open, and the towers and temple and everything start to collapse in there. And they're like, "All right, cool, we did it." And so Cyclops grabs Angel to carry him off out of there, and then Hank goes and grabs Kukulkan Khan, who's now back to El Tigre because the amulet like shattered or lost all its power or something. Ooh, what is going on? This is like a mess. Looks like the gates closed on them days. Anyway, this looks like a super hot mess. Interesting. Okay. No, I think maybe we can go straight here. It's just Pearl Harbor that's locked down. It's weird. Okay, anyway. Sorry, I got distracted. So then they're all running, they're all escaping, and then they're like, "We did it, yada yada." And then Angel's like, "Cyclops tried to kill me on purpose because he's jealous of Jean Grey's affection towards me or whatever." And everyone's like quiet about it. And Cyclops says, "I would never do that. That's ridiculous." And Angel and him everyone's very tense as the issue closes. So next up with the X-Men, we have them fighting the Fantastic Four. How did this come about? So we have the Tinkerer. I don't know much about him. I know that, the Thinker, the Mad Thinker. He's like super smart and stuff. And then the Puppet Master, who makes puppets of people. They combine forces, create a puppet of Professor X, take control of him, use his power, or take control of him. Get him to tell the X-Men that the Fantastic Four are being evil, so they got to go do something about it. And then they go, and they do it. And then it's a Fantastic Four issue. So the X-Men come in, and they like are all chummy, and it's the first time the X-Men and Fantastic Four have really met, besides Bobby and the Human Torch, which they talk about. They met and they took over. They beat up a bunch of guys. Anyway, I'm not a big Fantastic Four guy, but it seems Fantastic Four-y. The X-Men are all the X-Men. This is like, I don't know why this is set up here with this, because this is like prior to Jean Grey leaving the school. And she's also got different hair, which is interesting. But whatever. It's not big on canon or whatever. It's just the Fantastic Four meet the X-Men here. They have a little battle. Fantastic Four essentially kind of like surrendered because Mr. Fantastic thinks there's like more going on. The X-Men are kind of confused why they're fighting the Fantastic Four, and they're not like putting their whole heart and soul into it. And eventually they take Miss Fantastic, Sue Storm, or Invisible Girl, whatever she is at this point, and head to like this area. That's where they bump into the Man Thinker and the Puppet Master, and they're like, "Oh no, something's going on!" And then Beast. Oh, and then they get Professor X to like knock out all the X-Men, but the Beast, because he's intelligent, is able to like withstand Professor X's like mental thing, and he stays weak, and he goes and knocks the puppet out and smashes it. Then Professor X is able to take control again and wake up the X-Men, and they start fighting this android that Mr. Fantastic Richards built, and that the Man Thinker took. And this android's pretty impressive. It's like anything that attacks it, it gains like those abilities and becomes immune to it. So, how it gets defeated is Professor uses his psychic powers to turn its like button off inside its core, and that destroys it. And then they chase down, but the Mad Thinker and the Puppet Master get away. And then the X-Men and the Fantastic Four are like, "Sorry, bros, it's all good. We're gonna be friends now." And then they are. And then the X-Men leave, and it's like a sweet send-off. So pretty basic crossover, nothing too crazy.